The diplomatic exchange's grand hall of the Galactic Council stretched like a cathedral of stars. Ambassador Jake Rivers stood at the human delegation table, his simple black suit looking plain among the elaborate robes and biosuits of alien diplomats. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime. "The humans refuse our generous offer again," hissed Ambassador Thex of the Reptilian Dominion, his forked tongue flicked out in annoyance. "They want equal voting rights in the council? Impossible." Jake kept his face calm. 3 months of negotiations had led to this moment. Earth needed this trade agreement to survive, but not at the cost of becoming a servant species. Across the hall, Princess Lyra of the ethereal realm watched the proceedings with keen interest. Her people were ancient, beautiful, and powerful. Beyond measure, they had ruled the galaxy for millennia, treating younger species like children. But something about the humans intrigued her. Perhaps, Lyra spoke, her voice like silver bells. "We should hear what the human truly desires." The hall fell silent. When an ethereal spoke, everyone listened. Lyra glided forward, her translucent skin glowing with inner light. She was tall, graceful, with eyes like distant stars. "You humans are strange," she said to Jake directly. "Other species beg for our protection. They offer tribute, slaves, entire worlds. But you," she circled him slowly, "you demand respect as equals. Why?" Jake met her otherworldly gaze without flinching. "Because that's what we are. Equals. Not pets. Not servants. Partners." The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. Such boldness was unheard of. Lyra smiled, an expression both beautiful and dangerous. "Fascinating. Your species arrived in space just 50 years ago. We have conquered galaxies for 50,000 years. What makes you think you are our equals?" "Because," Jake said quietly, "we're still here." The words hung in the air. Every species in that room knew the story. Humanity had faced extinction 17 times in 50 years. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, alien invasions. Each time, they had fought back with nothing but determination and stubborn hope. "The Zephyrians tried to enslave your world." Lyra continued her interrogation. "You had no space fleet, no energy weapons. Yet you won. How?" Jake's jaw tightened at the memory. "We improvised. We adapted. We never gave up. The hive mind tried to assimilate your species. They had technology 1,000 years ahead of yours. Yet they failed. Why? Because," Jake said, his voice growing stronger, "you can't assimilate the human spirit. We're individuals, but we're also something more when we stand together." Lyra stopped circling. For the first time in centuries, she felt genuine curiosity about a lesser species. These humans were different. Weaker in body, shorter lived, with primitive technology. Yet they possessed something her ancient people had lost long ago. "Very well, human Jake Rivers," she said formally. "I will make you an offer. Not as a council decision, but as my personal choice." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. "Ethereals never made personal deals with lesser species. Anything you desire." Lyra continued, her star eyes fixed on his. "Name it, and if it is within my power, it shall be yours. Your people need resources. I control systems rich with rare minerals. You need protection. My fleets are unmatched. You need knowledge. My libraries contain the wisdom of ages." Jake felt the weight of his entire species on his shoulders. This was the moment that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. Earth was dying. They needed resources, technology, allies. Everything Lyra offered could save billions of lives. The other ambassadors leaned forward, waiting for his answer. The Reptilian Dominion's eyes gleamed with malice, expecting him to grovel. The insectoid collective buzzed with anticipation. Even the stoic rock people seemed interested. Lyra stepped closer, her presence both intimidating and alluring. "Speak, human. What does your heart truly desire?" Jake looked into those ancient, beautiful eyes. He thought of Earth, of his people struggling to survive. He thought of the weight of responsibility, of the loneliness of command. He thought of this incredible being before him, who could end humanity's suffering with a word. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, meant only for her enhanced hearing. A night with you. The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. In 50,000 years, no one had ever asked for her personally. Not her power, not her resources, not her influence. Just her. The hall waited in tense silence, unaware of what had been whispered. But Lyra's expression had changed completely. The calculating princess was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. A woman who had just been surprised. The unexpected response to Lyra stared at Jake for a long moment, her ethereal features unreadable. The great hall of the Galactic Council held its breath. Thousands of alien dignitaries waiting to learn humanity's fate. Interesting, she said finally, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. She turned to address the assembly. The human has made his request. I will consider it. Ambassador Thex's serpentine head reared back in confusion. What did the primitive ask for? Surely not something you would actually silence. Lyra's single word froze the reptilian diplomat mid-sentence. Her star eyes swept the assembly. This session is adjourned. I will give my answer tomorrow. The hall erupted into chaos as she glided away, her flowing robes trailing light like a comet's tail. Jake remained standing at his table, acutely aware of the hundreds of alien eyes fixed on him with mixtures of curiosity, disgust, and calculation. Rivers called Ambassador Wells from the human delegation. The older woman hurried to his side. What did you ask for? The entire delegation's future depends on this. Jake loosened his tie slightly. Something unexpected. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give right now. Jake gathered his papers. We'll know tomorrow if it worked. That night, Jake sat alone in his quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel. Through the viewport, the Galactic Council station sparkled like a jeweled crown against the starfield. Somewhere in that maze of corridors and chambers, an immortal princess was deciding the fate of his species. He'd gambled everything on a moment of pure instinct. When Lyra had asked what he desired, every logical part of his mind had screamed. The obvious answers: technology, resources, protection. But something in her ancient eyes had made him realize she'd heard those requests a million times before. So he'd given her the one thing no one had ever asked an ethereal for in 50,000. Yours. Himself. A soft chime announced a visitor. Jake opened the door to find a figure in a hooded cloak. May I enter? The voice was unmistakably Lyra's. Jake stepped aside, his heart hammering. She entered and lowered her hood, her luminous hair spilling free. In the dim lighting of his quarters, she looked less like a goddess and more like a woman. Your request, she said without preamble, was either very clever or very foolish. Probably both, Jake admitted. Lyra moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. Do you know what it's like to be immortal? Human? To watch civilizations rise and fall like seasons? To have every conversation be a variation of the same requests, the same fears, the same desperate scrambling for power? No, Jake said quietly. But I know what it's like to be lonely. She turned to study him. You think I'm lonely? I think you're the loneliest being in the galaxy. The words hung between them like a challenge. Lyra's expression shifted through surprise, anger, and something that might have been vulnerability. And you think one night with a short-lived human would cure 50 millennia of solitude? Jake met her gaze steadily. I think it would remind you what it feels like to be wanted for who you are, not what you can give. Lyra was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. You realize what you've done. Your species needs resources, technology, protection. I could have given you all of that. Instead, you asked for something worthless. Did I? One night means nothing in the span of eternity. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe it means everything. She moved closer, her alien beauty both intimidating and magnetic. I have had lovers, human, beings of power and influence across the galaxy. What makes you think you could offer me anything they could not? Because they wanted something from you, Jake replied. Power, status, access to your influence. I just want you. For one night. For however long you'd have me. The admission surprised them both. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, and Jake realized he'd revealed more than he'd intended. You would sacrifice your species' future for personal desire. No, Jake said firmly. I'd gamble it on the hope that an immortal princess might remember what it feels like to be human. Lyra laughed a sound like crystal bells in a gentle wind. Human? I am ethereal. I am beyond your mortal concerns. Are you? Jake stepped closer. Then why are you here? Why did my request shake you so badly that you had to adjourn the most important trade negotiation? In decades? Her laughter faded. They stood facing each other in the dim corridors, the weight of the species' futures hanging between them. Tomorrow, Lyra said finally, I will give the council my answer. But tonight, she reached up and touched his face, with fingers that glowed like starlight. Tonight, let us see if a human can teach an immortal what it means to feel alive. Asterisk. The connection Jake woke to find starlight streaming through his quarters viewport. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then memory flooded back the negotiation, his impossible request. And Lyra. She stood silhouetted against the stars, her ethereal form glowing softly in the darkness. She had stayed the entire night, something Jake suspected she hadn't done in centuries. Regrets? He asked softly. Many, she replied without turning. But not about this. Jake rose and joined her at the viewport. In the distance, the Galactic Council Station prepared for another day of politics and power games. The council expects an answer today, Lyra said. And what will you tell them? She turned to face him, her ancient eyes holding new depths. That depends on what you tell me. First, about what? About why you really made that request. Her voice carried the weight of millennia. Don't claim it was just desire, Jake Rivers. I've lived too long to believe in such simple motivations. Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Do you know Earth's history? Our wars, our struggles, some of it. We've always been divided. Nations, tribes, religions, ideologies. Humans fighting humans while the galaxy watched. But when the first alien invasion came, something changed. Jake's voice grew stronger. We stopped being Americans, Chinese, European, African. We became human. One species, one world, one people. Lyra listened intently, seeing a pattern she hadn't noticed before. Every challenge since then has made us stronger, Jake continued. The Zephyrian slave ships, the hive mind's assimilation attempts, the crystal plague. Each time, we adapted, we united, we survived. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we refused to give up on each other. And what does this have to do with your request? Jake met her star-bright gaze. Because I saw something in you that reminded me of us. You're not just a princess or a diplomat. You're isolated by your own power, separated from genuine connection by 50,000 years of beings who see you as a means to an end. Lyra's expression shifted, vulnerability flickering across her features. You asked what I desired, Jake said. I could have asked for technology to save my world, resources to feed my people, protection to keep us safe. All logical choices. But in that moment, I realized something. What? That the greatest gift we could give each other wasn't political or material. It was simply seeing each other as people first. Lyra was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice held a note of wonder. In 50 millennia, no one has ever seen me as anything but what I could provide for them. That's not entirely true, Jake said gently. What do you mean, your own people? Don't they see you as, my people see me as a princess, a responsibility, a symbol? Lyra's glow dimmed slightly. Even among the ethereals, I am a part. Too young to be truly ancient, too old to remember what it was like to be ordinary. Jake understood then. She wasn't just lonely, she was trapped between worlds, belonging fully to neither. Last night, she said quietly, for the first time in centuries, I felt human. She laughed. The sound both sad and beautiful. Is that what you call it? This feeling of being present in the moment, of time meaning something, among other things. Your species is remarkable, Jake Rivers. You live such brief lives, yet you burn so brightly. Maybe that's why we burn bright. Jake replied, because we know our time is limited. A soft chime indicated incoming communications. Both of them knew what it meant the council was convening. I have to go, Lyra said, but she didn't move. I know. What happens next will change everything. For both our species. Jake nodded. Are you afraid? The question seemed to surprise her. Yes, she admitted. I haven't been afraid I can't remember how long. Fear isn't weakness, Jake said. It's proof that something matters to you. Lyra reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm, electric, alien yet familiar. Whatever happens in that chamber, Jake Rivers, last night was not a mistake. For me either. She squeezed his hand once, then released it. I should prepare. The council will expect a show of power, of ancient authority. And will you give them one? Lyra's smile was sharp and beautiful and utterly dangerous. Oh yes, but not the kind they're expecting. She pulled her hood up, transforming back into the mysterious princess who had visited in SH. Addo. But as she reached the door, she paused. Jake? Yes, thank you for reminding me what it feels like to choose something for myself. Then she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of starlight and the promise of a day that would reshape the galaxy. The Revolution Galactic Council chamber had never seen such tension. Every seat was filled, every delegation present. Word had spread through the station like wildfire. The ethereal princess would give her answer to the human request today. Jake stood at the human delegation table, his hands steady despite the weight of history on his shoulders. Round him, alien whispers filled the air like static electricity. The primitive asked for weapons, hissed Ambassador Thax to his reptilian colleagues. Mark my words, she'll destroy them for their insolence. Perhaps he begged for mercy, buzzed the insectoid collective's representative. Humans are known for their desperation. Only the rock people remained silent, their stone faces unreadable. A harmonic tone silenced the chamber. Princess Lyra entered, no longer the intimate woman who had spent the night in his quarters. She was fully the ethereal princess, now glowing with inner light. Her robes flowing like liquid starlight, her presence commanding absolute attention. She took her position at the central podium, her star eyes sweeping the assembly. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of 50,000 years. Honored delegates, she began. Yesterday, I made an offer to the human representative. I promised to grant any request within my power. Today, I announce my decision. The chamber held its breath. But first, Lyra continued, I must address something that has become clear to me. Through our negotiations, for millennia, this council has operated on a simple principle: might makes right. The strong dictate to the weak. The ancient command the young. The powerful exploit the powerless. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the assembly. This wasn't the speech anyone had expected. We have built a galaxy where species are ranked by their technology, their age, their military strength, where new civilizations must prove their worth by submission, by offering tribute, by accepting their place at the bottom of an eternal hierarchy. Ambassador Thex's forked tongue flicked nervously. Your Highness, surely you're not suggesting. I am suggesting nothing. Lyra's voice cut through his protest like a blade. I am declaring a new path forward. She turned to face Jake directly. The human asked for something no species has ever requested in the history of this council. Not resources, not protection, not technology. He asked for connection, for recognition not as a supplicant, but as an equal. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and angry hisses. The reptilian delegation rose to their feet in protest. The insectoid collective's buzzing reached a fever pitch. "This is absurd," Vex declared. "Humans are barely out of their primitive phase. They have no right to. They have every right." Lyra's voice boomed with power that shook the chamber's foundations. "They have earned it through courage, through resilience, through something we ancient races have forgotten: hope." She began to pace, her words building like a storm. "When the Zephyrians tried to enslave Earth, what did we do? We watched. When the hive mind sought to assimilate humanity, where were we? Observing from a safe distance. When plague and war threatened to destroy them, did we offer aid? No. We waited to see if they were worthy of our notice." Jake felt the eyes of every delegate on him, but he kept his focus on Lyra. "Yet humans survived," she continued. "More than survived, they thrived. They turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. Their short lives taught them to value every moment. Their divisions taught them the power of unity. Their struggles taught them to never abandon hope." The chamber fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. "So when Ambassador Rivers asked for a night with me, he wasn't asking for conquest or possession. He was asking for the one thing we've denied every emerging species: recognition as equals, worthy of respect, worthy of connection." Lyra stopped pacing and faced the assembly. "I granted his request, and in doing so, I learned something that 50,000 years of power and privilege could not teach me. I learned what it means to be seen not for what I can give, but for who I am. This is madness." Vex slammed his clawed hand on his delegation table. "You would overturn millennia of order for one primitive species." "No," Lyra said quietly, but her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "I would overturn millennia of oppression for the principle they represent. The idea that every species, regardless of age or power, deserves a seat at this table as equals." She raised her hand, and light began to gather round her fingers. "I am Princess Lyra of the ethereal realm. I claim the ancient right of imperial decree. Let it be recorded that the ethereal empire recognizes humanity as a full and equal member of the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges therein." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted, some in outrage, others in support. The reptilian dominion stormed out, their threats echoing through the halls. The insectoid collective buzzed with frantic communication. But through it all, Jake kept his eyes on Lyra. She met his gaze across the chaos and smiled, not the diplomatic smile of a princess, but the genuine smile of a woman who had just chosen love over power. The galaxy would never be the same. The new beginning 6 months after the historic council session. Jake stood on the observation deck of the first human-designed diplomatic station. Through the vast windows, he watched ships from dozens of species dock at the ports, but now they came as partners, not supplicants. Lost in thought again, Lyra's voice came from behind him, carrying warmth he'd never heard in the old council chambers. Jake turned to see her approaching, no longer in the formal robes of an ethereal princess, but in simple clothes that somehow made her ethereal beauty more striking, not less. "Just thinking about how much has changed," he said, taking her hand as she joined him at the window. "The reptilian dominion is still refusing to trade with us," she noted, but without concern. "Their loss. The Aquatic Federation is more than happy to fill those contracts." Jake squeezed her hand, and I heard the rock people are actually talking now. Full sentences, not just those stone-faced nods. Lyra laughed, a sound that had become precious to him. "Elder Granite told me yesterday that humans are surprisingly durable for soft skins. I believe that's the highest compliment their species has ever given. Progress." Jake agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the flow of Interstellar traffic. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months ago. Species that had barely acknowledged each other now working together on projects that benefited everyone. "The Insectoid Collective wants to establish a joint research facility," Lyra said. They're fascinated by human innovation methods. And the Ethereal Council? Are they still angry about your reckless decision? Lyra's expression grew more serious. Some are. Others are curious. It seems several of my people have been watching human culture with interest. Your movies, your music, your art. We've been immortal for so long. We've forgotten how to create things that mattered. Jake considered this. Is that why you really did it? Not just for us, but for your own people? Perhaps. She turned to face him fully. Or perhaps I did it because a wise human once told me that the greatest gift we could give each other was seeing each other as people first. And do you regret it? Giving up your position, your power. Lyra's star-bright eyes sparkled with amusement. I gave up nothing that mattered. I'm still a princess, still an ethereal. But now I'm also something I never thought I could be. What's that? Happy. Jake pulled her closer, marveling at how naturally she fit against him despite their different origins. The other species are calling it the human revolution. They say we've changed everything. They're not wrong, Lyra agreed. But it's not just about humans. It's about the idea that strength comes from unity, not domination. That wisdom comes from diversity, not hierarchy. That the galaxy is big enough for all of us to thrive. Very philosophical for a princess. I learned from the best teacher. She looked up at him. A human who dared to ask for something impossible? It wasn't impossible, Jake said. It just required someone brave enough to try. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Jake checked his communicator and grinned. It's from Earth. The first group of exchange students is arriving next week. Humans going to study at the Ethereal Academy of Sciences. And ethereal students going to human universities, Lyra added. I'm particularly excited about the one who wants to study human comedy. She thinks humor might be the key to understanding mortality. She might be right. They turned back to the window, where a new ship was approaching, sleek, silver, with design elements that blended human engineering with ethereal artistry. The first truly collaborative vessel, built by both species working together. Sometimes I wonder, Jake said thoughtfully, what would have happened if I'd asked for something else that day? Technology, resources, protection. We would have gotten a trade agreement, Lyra replied. Humanity would have survived, but remained junior partners in someone else's empire. And you? I would have returned to my palace, to my immortal solitude, to watching the galaxy from a distance. She leaned into him. Instead, I learned that the most profound connections come not from what we can give each other, but from what we choose to share. Jake kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of starlight that always seemed to surround her. No regrets, only one, she said, then looked up at him with a mischievous smile. I regret that it took 50,000 years for someone to ask me for a night together. Well, Jake said, pulling her closer, lucky for both of us. Humans are very good at making up for lost time. Outside the window, the galaxy continued its eternal dance. But now it moved to a new rhythm, one of cooperation, respect, and the radical idea that love could be stronger than power. And in the depths of space, where light from distant stars carried the whispers of countless civilizations, a new story was being written, not of conquest or domination, but of connection. The human revolution had begun with a single impossible request. It would reshape the galaxy with hope. The end asterisk.